This is the Soul Expansion Soundboard, an hour of honest conversations and straightforward advice on spiritual growth, limitless creation, and enlightened evolution, with two certified spiritual coaches and soulpreneurs who understand what it's like to navigate spiritual growth in an ever-changing world. You'll be part of illuminating discussions featuring spirituality, self-development, inner healing, manifesting, and expansive creation of the abundant life you truly deserve. Now, here are your hosts, Roz Kincaid and Julian Crossan-Hill.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Expansion Soundboard. Happy fall equinox in the U.S. on this side of the hemisphere. So, I am one of your co-hosts, Roz Kincaid, and of course, I have Julian with me today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julian Crossan-Hill, spiritual life coach and human design specialist and founder of Priest of Inanna. So really excited to be talking about this topic today. Today, we're going to be talking about the joy in saying no. And I think this is a topic that we're going to touch on a lot of different things. We're going to talk a little bit about conditioning and doing things out of a sense of obligation. We're going to talk about boundaries and setting healthy boundaries, and particularly around our finances and our money and our relationships. And so this is going to be a really good, juicy topic that a lot of people struggle with. But before we actually dive into the conversation, Roz is going to tell you a little bit about today's giveaway.
Yes, we have a little giveaway for you today. And what I'm giving away today is a book that has been very instrumental for me in helping me to establish and hold boundaries. Because it's one thing we'll get into is one thing to hold, set boundaries, and it's another thing to establish them and hold them, set them and hold them. And so today, what I'm going to be giving away is this book by Dr. Nedra Glover Tawwab, Set Boundaries and Find Peace. Dr. Nedra Tawwab is she is an Atlanta-based psychologist and therapist, and she is, her focus is helping people work through boundaries, teaching people to communicate boundaries, and her lovely book is just amazing in getting you straight with your boundaries. So somebody today is going to be lucky enough to win that. And if you want to get into the drawing for that giveaway, make sure that you hashtag in the comments giveaway. So what you put in the comments is hashtag giveaway. And I'm going to be drawing later on in the show today. So throughout the show, make sure you drop in the comments hashtag giveaway. So let's get into this, because boundaries is an epidemic. Not having them is an epidemic, it feels like. And I think that let's start with the definition of boundaries, okay? Because that just kind of gives us a good starting point, and to just get clear on what a boundary is, because we need to know what we're talking about here, because we just need to be clear, okay? So according to the Oxford Dictionary, a boundary is defined as something that indicates or fixes a limit or extent. In other words, it is where one thing ends and where another one begins, right? So it's where energy starts, energy begins, energy, where you start, where they end. And really, boundaries is not so much for other people, but boundaries are first and foremost for you, right? They help keep you in alignment. They help protect your energy. They teach people how to interact with you, and they teach people how to treat you. And so if we can be clear on what a boundary is and get that established, then knowing that, I think, is half the battle. Julian, what you got?
Well, I think I'm going to dive right into something that is kind of on my mind around boundaries. And, usually when we think about boundaries, we think about things like doing too much for people, people taking advantage, these kinds of things. And I think that's a very traditional view of boundaries. But I want to talk about another boundary that we don't often talk about, and that is your values. So each of us has our strongly held values, the things that we really believe in, that we value more than anything else. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't keep strong boundaries around those values, particularly when it comes to work, right? A lot of us put up with working for companies that don't hold the same values as us. And we allow ourselves to get out of integrity in this. And I think that what we need to be doing is creating stronger boundaries around our values. We need to start thinking about our values less as some abstract thing that we hold or believe in, and more as a non negotiable.
Definitely agreed. And knowing your values is the perfect foundation for setting the boundaries. I think that in looking at values, first of all, there needs to be an inventory done as to whether or not you still align with those values, because a lot of our values and even our beliefs, which are informed by our values, come from family dynamics, family values, the family unit, what we've been taught, what we've witnessed, what we've heard, all of it. And so to go a little bit deeper into values, do you know what your values are? And once you know what they are, are they still valuable to you? Are they still true to for you at this point in your life? And then from there, you can move on and start to create boundaries, based on those values. So yes, know your values. If listen, if you don't value money, then give all your money away. I mean, and that's okay to do. Be a giver. If you don't value your time and space at work, then you have the choice to be everything to everybody. But just know that there are trade-offs to that too. When you don't honor your own values, when you don't honor your own beliefs about yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we boundaries are something that I don't think we talk about enough. So they're not something that I talk about a lot because I've never really had a problem with my boundaries. Like, I grew up with a healthy respect for saying no and had no problem with it.
Mm.
My mother, on the other hand, I always viewed her as somewhat of a doormat. And I used to be like, Mom, you got to say no to stuff. You got to say no to stuff, because she would just let people take advantage and take advantage of her. And it was interesting as she got older and she started to kind of create more boundaries and start saying no. And it was definitely a process for her. Like, it's something you have to practice, right? You say no
Hmm.
to one thing first, and then you've got to celebrate the wins first, like, hey, I said no to that, like, good for me. But you also got to really keep practicing maintaining those boundaries, like setting them and maintaining them, because when you don't practice them, that's when you start to fall into old patterns. And I always like to talk about human design. I think it all comes down to the ways that we experience conditioning in our design. And I think that conditioning plays a huge part in making our boundaries more permeable, because we allow this idea of obligation. I should do this, right? Like, people, we say this all the time: I should go do this, I should do that, should you, but forget the should. Do you want to? Because I think that's an important thing. Like, what do you desire to do? What is your design telling you you need to do, not what you should do? Now, obviously, there's some shoulds that we got to do. Like, I should pay rent. Yeah, probably need to do that. We
You
can't
probably need
really
to go ahead and
decide
do
not to
that.
do that one. But like social events, how often do you go out with friends or go out to dinner with people that you don't want to do? How often do you show up at events that you don't want to do? How often do you volunteer for things you don't want to do? These are all based on our shoulds, and they come through our conditioning often. For instance, w- one of my mother's things in conditioning was feeling worthy. And so, what are the ways that she sort of felt worthy and felt like she was fulfilling her purpose in life was to help people. And people took advantage of that a lot. And so, we have to be aware of that conditioning. And I'm not saying don't help people, but you also need to have lines in like how far that help will go. And when you start helping people to the detriment of your own well-being, then that's where we get to the need to really evaluate those boundaries, reinforce them, and find the joy in saying no.
Amen to all of it. Definitely. But you know what comes up when you talk about that is I have found and experienced myself that a lot of times that you know we want to have boundaries, we try to have boundaries, but what starts to influence our whether we say no or not is, will somebody else be mad? Am I gonna let them down? What they gonna think about me? I don't want to disappoint people. I've heard all kinds of stuff when it comes to people wanting to say no, like the desire to want to say no, but they're often held back by some external reaction or what somebody else is going to think about them, or upsetting somebody. Like, here's the thing about that is that, would you rather, and I got 2 points, would you rather carry the guilt, the shame, or whatever, or the fear of saying no for because you got to live with that for the rest of your life? You got to live with you 24/7, right? So would you rather not have to deal with that and deal with somebody having a tantrum for like 5 minutes, as opposed to you doing something and feeling bad and ranting and raving about it on the inside and cussing and fussing about it and complaining about it and carrying the resentment for however long that you are going to be alive potentially? Like, you got to start to weigh out the risk. Like, the risk doesn't have to be that high, because what happens is you not saying no, and let me make it clear, for you not saying no is already causing wounding to the relationship, because you're not being honest, you're not being authentic, and you got somebody else over here thinking that it's what they're doing to you is okay because you keep allowing it. You're not putting up a boundary. No, period. That's all it takes, right? To set the boundary. No. And when you don't exercise your no or communicate your no to people, then one, that causes wounding, to wounding in you and wounding to the relationship. And two, it's like they're gonna be mad for just for a little bit. And the people that respect and love you aren't gonna have a problem with your no. And it's not that they, whether they are evolved enough to understand or respect, but the people that really love and respect you and get you, they're not gonna have a problem with your no. At least they're not gonna say anything that they have a problem with your no. But they will understand that this is something that you want to do, but you got to get past just wanting to say no and actually say no. And that takes practice. Saying no to the little stuff, saying no to responding to a text message, saying no to responding to an email that you can't give your will or energy to right now because you burnt out. Think about the risk. You got to weigh the risks, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. So listen, here's the thing. We got to think about this from the perspective of responsibility and accountability. And this idea that you're going to disappoint someone, make them angry, make them unhappy, all of those things. Listen,
Hmm.
no one else makes your emotions. You choose to be happy, you choose to be angry, you choose to be disappointed. And so don't take responsibility away from that other person. They need to be accountable for their own emotional state, for the decisions and the things that they're choosing to manifest and to experience and to be in the moment. And so you saying no isn't making them angry. They are choosing to be angry about you enforcing your boundary. It's not making them disappointed. They are choosing to be disappointed. And that really shifts it, because the responsibility isn't on you to make someone else happy, to make someone else feel calm, to make someone else feel peaceful, or to make someone else feel cared for. The responsibility is on that person to achieve that for themselves. And so you're taking responsibility and accountability from the other person and sacrificing your own well-being in the process to do it. So stop trying to be responsible for other people, because other people are not your problem or your burden. And I think that is where people lose sight of their boundaries and their ability to say no to things, because they feel like they have to be responsible for other people.
So basically, stop being codependent. Stop allowing somebody else's emotions and reactions and actions influence your own emotions, reactions, and actions and responses. Like, we got to get out of that. There's it's one thing to be community and tribal minded, but it's another thing to allow how somebody feels and their choice of how they want to feel to then become how you feel. Like, if they're pissed off, then you become sad. Like, if they're mad, then you get mad. Like, that's not serving us at the highest level to do that. And so yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying, Julian. Definitely. Um one thing that's coming up is that I wanted to talk a little bit about mm, not how to create boundaries, because I mean, creating boundaries is just really simple, but w- I think there needs to be an understanding that when you set a boundary, like, there is realistically somebody's going to kick back. Somebody is going to resist. So um you're going to get resistance in the form of people testing your boundaries. You're going to get resistance in the form of people just pushing back. People going to try and shame you. People will totally try to disregard you and act like, oh, I didn't think that was meant for me, or just, trying to rationalize or question you about your boundaries. Or people going to get defensive. They'll ghost you. All of that. Those things you cannot allow to move you, because again, for me, it comes down to what becomes more important. Is it worth it for me to continue to feel overwhelmed, burnt out, and resentful, or could I just end all of this suffering and just say, damn it, no? Maybe not with the attitude that I just had, but just saying no, right? Like, you could end all of that by saying no. And Julian is right. It takes practice, and when you get in the habit of saying no consistently, let me tell you what's going to happen. People going to hear you, and they will understand you, and they won't even ask you for the shit that they've been asking you for, or ask you to do stuff that they've been wanting you to do. They'll go and they'll figure that out from somewhere else or within themselves. So yes, it takes consistency. It takes practice. You can't just establish the boundary and one not communicate it. And you also can't expect people to just get it on the first try. Like, you're teaching them by you practicing boundaries, you're teaching them practice as well. That makes sense.
It does make sense, but I want to back up just a little bit. You mentioned in talking about this process the tribe or community, right? And one of the things human design teaches us when we talk about tribal circuits is that the tribal circuits are about the trade-offs we make in order to be in community. And that means, I give a little, you give a little, right? I bring my talents and my gifts to the tribe, and the tribe shares, the other members of the tribe share their gifts and their talents with me. And so it's a reciprocal relationship. And I think where this conversation of boundaries really comes in is when that is out of equilibrium, when it's no longer reciprocal, when you're giving and giving and giving and you're not receiving back, when you're not receiving the support back that you're putting out, then that gets out of whack, right? We get out of balance. And that unbalance is what leads us to start to feel overwhelmed, burnt out, and resentful about the things that we're being asked to do or give to other people. And so, this process of saying no is how we sort of say, first of all, say, hold on, things are out of whack here, right? Like, this is one sided, and I want to create some more balance here. Now, as Ross said, some people take a negative reaction to that. And that is because some people are operating in a position that is out of equilibrium, right? They've given up responsibility for their own lives. They've given up responsibility for the emotions that they're choosing to experience. They're letting other people make them mad. They're letting other people make them happy. They're letting other people make them disappointed. And they're also giving up responsibility often for the business of life, for doing things, for acquiring what they need, and so they're asking other people to do it without giving anything back. And that's really where this idea of boundaries comes in, where we need to start to sort of cut people off. Like, I talk a lot about being of service and following your spiritual calling, but there's also, there's that verse in the Bible where it talks about throwing your pearls before swine. And there comes a place where you have to say, okay, enough is enough. I have given enough. I'm not receiving back. There's not the gratitude, there's not the appreciation, because there needs to be an energetic exchange. Even if that person has nothing to give and the only energetic exchange is thank you or gratitude, when you're not receiving that and you're still continuing to say yes to those things, that's when you're sort of sending more and more energy in a one direction. And it's no wonder that you're burnt out. So, boundaries is really about saying, I want to honor the universal law of equilibrium here. And right now, things are out of whack. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to say no to this because it doesn't serve me, or because I'm not giving or doing this in the right spirit. The intention behind it isn't pure, isn't part of my truth anymore. Because that's the other aspect. When we continue to give, we continue to do these things out of a sense of obligation, out of that sense of should, we're no longer doing it in the right spirit and the right intention. And that's also a sign that we need to say no, that we need to pull back, because when we're talking about giving and receiving, the intention behind both of those is very, very important. And so when we're saying no to things that we don't want to do, we're not doing them in the right intention. We're not doing them with the right spirit. And so it's going to be harder for the other person to receive it in the right spirit as well, because the energy is wrong. And we can't truly be of service to spirit. We can't truly be answering our spiritual calling if we're doing it out of a sense of obligation or expectation that we're going to get something back. That's not genuine service. And in those cases, that's when we need to look to our boundary and say no.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And not exercising your no also takes you out of it disempowers you. I know that people feel like that when they overgive, or they're always there, or they make themselves available to serve all the time, and when you do it at your own detriment, it disempowers you. Like, think about the energy, the space, and the time that you're getting robbed of when you're not getting that back, just like Julian said, or when you are always the one giving, you're always the one bailing somebody else, you're always the one doing for somebody else, but then on the weekends you can't even pull yourself off the couch from binging Netflix or just taking a nap to go and do things that you want to do for yourself. That's not how it's supposed to work. Giving past your the point of, you know I don't even know. Just over giving is what I'm trying to get at. It's disempowering. It takes away from you being able to, I guess, advocate for yourself a bit. In that you start to base the quality of your relationships on your level of giving. That's what I'm trying to get at. Because it starts to, I guess, how can I say this? You start to find identity in you being a giver. And I give. That's what I do. That's what I do. But what are people doing for you? What are you doing for yourself? I wonder what would happen if the half the things that you do for somebody else, you start to do for yourself, and how would that change the game for you? How would that shift your energy? How would you get more time back in your life? How would that affect your peace and your joy? Because all of these shoulds and have to, actually you don't. Actually you don't have to. Nobody is holding a gun to your head, and even if they were, you would still have a choice to say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. This is the last time. Well, if it's the last time, well, then make it the last time. Be empowered and make it the last time. Let the first time be the last time. Mm.
Okay, I'm going to cycle around to something that has been on my mind a lot and I've talked about in a lot of different things, and it's truth and trust.
Come on.
And again, we come back to those here. First of all, what is your truth about your boundary? Because your truth today around your boundaries and what you are willing to do and what you want to do are going to change. So check in every day. What is my truth around whether I need to do this, whether I should do this, whether I want to do this? And then the second part is trusting in that truth and trusting in yourself and your own power to enforce your boundaries. Because when we don't trust ourselves is when we get into trouble with boundaries. We don't trust ourselves to be complete in our own being, right? We feel like people, we have to have maintain these relationships with people who take and take and take. And that's because we don't trust ourselves that we are worthy of better relationships, or that we don't trust ourselves that we can meet other people that are going to be better friends to us, or we don't trust ourselves to feel complete in our own being. And because of that, we become doormats. And
Mm-hmm.
so always come back to what is my truth today about the things that I'm being asked to do, and my desire versus my obligation or my sense of obligation around this. And then trust that truth. Trust yourself and trust in your own power to say no to the things that you don't want to do, to say no to the people who just take and take and take. Create those boundaries and then trust in them.
And also trust that um, the people that you are helping can help themselves. Just like you found a way to help yourself to build your own life, trust that they can do the same without you coming in and saving the day all the time. Not even all the time, or just whenever they ask. Like sometimes when people come asking, and it's not so much it's not just trusting yourself, but it's also trusting that source God is going to look out for them too, and that you might be in the way of that by saying yes all the time, by bailing them out all the time, by giving them money all the time, especially when when the other person has not um taken the time to cultivate and maintain a relationship with you. Let me tell you something. Uh People around me know that you just can't be away from me for a long period of time and then just show up in my life asking me for stuff, because that stuff's not gonna work for me. And I know that it sounds like it's easy for me to do, but I've practiced that. I've had to like really put that into play a lot to be able to be comfortable with teaching people that that's not what we're doing over here. And I don't mean to sound mean about it, but sometimes you got to let people know you mean business. And in your tone and in your energy, you can still be loving, you can still be giving, you can still be compassionate and empathetic to people. Like, hey, I'm sorry that you're going through this, but I'm not going to be able to help you this time. Maybe next time. And so having a level of trust in source that God can take care of it all, including you, including the people that you keep helping that aren't giving back to you. Like, God got it, seriously. And if you are moved, like really moved on the inside to really help this person, or if you have a part to play in this person's life evolving and growing, then the signs will be there, and it won't be just one time. It will be synchronistic. It will be multiple times. So I think a lot of it has to do with discernment. We really have to tap into discernment and read the energy and read the writing on the wall, um and know when we need to fall back and let God handle it, or when we need to step in and give a hand up. Trust and truth, and own your truth. Own your truth that I don't want to do this anymore. This is hurting me more than it's helping you. Like how true is that for you? And then making a decision based on that. Like maybe, maybe you adjust how you help people, or just you being available. That's the other thing. Stop making yourself so damn available for people, because they're going to get used to it, and they're going to think that that's the normal. And you teach people how to treat you by the things that you continue to say yes to.
Absolutely. So, a couple of things I want to sort of touch on. First of all, was this idea of disempowering the other person when you're constantly bailing them out, constantly helping them, constantly being a crutch for them. And I think that in these situations, we really need to stop and think about what is the lesson the other person is intended to learn through this process, and what's the lesson that I'm intending to learn through saying no, right? Because there's probably a lesson there. Maybe there's a lesson of you give too much, and saying no is how you learn to sort of start to discern how much is appropriate. Maybe the other person is struggling in something because there's a lesson they need to learn. And part of that lesson is to learn to rely on themselves, to tap into their own sufficiency, which is something that Roz and I talked about in the last show. The other thing I want to talk about, and Roz, you and I talked about this earlier this week, and that is one of the biggest sources of our obligation to do things that we don't want to is when we make commitments to haphazardly. When we say we'll do things, or we commit to things, or we promise people things that maybe we didn't really think through, or in the moment we got wrapped up and we said yes, or maybe there was conditioning field and human design involved. But whatever it is, we make these commitments, and then when we step back, we're like, oh shit, I didn't want to do that. I do that all the time with social commitments. People will be like, hey, you want to do this on Friday? And I'll be like, yeah, let's do that. And then by Thursday, my emotional wave is completed. And I'm like, I want to stay in on the couch and watch Netflix on Friday. Now I've committed myself to this thing. So we need to be more aware of the commitments we're making. And perhaps if we feel like we make too many commitments, and that these commitments obligate us too often to doing things that we don't really want to do, then maybe instead of promising or committing, we could be a little more non-committal. Maybe we can take a pause and say, like, the example about going out on Friday night, maybe I could say, that sounds really good, but let's check in on Thursday and see how I'm feeling, rather than committing to, yes, this is the plan. Leave that openness, so that if you're
some awarenesses around boundaries that you can start to carry forward and integrate. We hope to see you next time. Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been the Soul Expansion Soundboard. Join us live every other Friday.